all of that having been said, I think we're going to... Look, it's a bird!
Fly on out of here!
Up and away.
Dang it, I thought you guys were going to just do the same thing.
It's a plane!
It's Superman!
That was
bye.
super.
Yeah, see you next week.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hi there. Welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I'm Joe, joined this week by...
Devin.
And...
Steve.
Yeah. So, joined this week. I guess joined every week.
I was about to say, I'm Steve, and I'm filling Steve's seat this week.
Yeah.
I'm Devin, filling in for Devin. She's on assignment.
Yeah. And I've taken over Joe's body. I'm not really Joe. I'm a demon. Yeah, okay. So, let's tackle a mystery. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. This week, we're going to talk about the mysterious death of Huey Long in 1935. Huey Long's a pretty famous guy. Probably most of you have heard of him. Certainly, if you're an older American, you've heard of him. He also was known as the Kingfish. He was governor of Louisiana from 1928 to 1932, and then was elected to the U.S. Senate from Louisiana in 1932. He was assassinated in 1935.
And don't feel bad if you haven't actually heard of him, because I hadn't.
You hadn't heard of him? Yeah.
Had you?
Yeah, I had, but that's because... Was it John Goodman played a role as him in the movie The Kingfish? I think it was John Goodman who
Could have
played that.
been. Yeah, I don't know.
That's the only reason I knew about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Although, you want to know a funny side note?
No.
Okay, so here it is anyway. Joe initially was pitching this story to me a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't remember who Huey Long was, and I got him completely confused with somebody else in American politics, which would be James Garfield,
Oh.
Oh, really?
who was assassinated.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there going, dude, I don't know how you're going to turn the assassination of James Garfield into a podcast. That doesn't work. The only thing that I know about Garfield is, you know, the disgusting stuff that happened to him after he was shot. You guys know that, right?
No, actually, I'm kind of ignorant of that. What happened?
So when he was shot in the stomach and he couldn't eat. So he stayed alive for weeks after the fact. So one of the things they tried to do to keep him alive, this is an actual thing, they gave him what are called nutrient enemas.
Ew.
Yeah.
I think it was peanut butter. They were feeding him rectally, which caused such obscene gas that even the doctors couldn't be in the room.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh, God.
But I just couldn't figure out how you would turn that into a mystery.
Well, you know, it's time to change the theme of our podcast anyway.
No.
Really gross stuff. Yeah. Because, yeah, we kind of tapped out all the whole unsolved mysteries. This is the last one, except for, this is the last one. Yeah, I checked the internet. There's none left.
Nothing left. Yeah.
Sorry, folks. Okay, back to our mystery. Huey Long.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're actually doing a real mystery. Sorry.
Yeah. Even he was popular. Huey Long was popular in Louisiana, but he's also very polarizing. You either loved him or you hated him. His detractors called him, among other things, a dictator, a demagogue, a fascist, and a socialist.
Demagogue is like one of my favorite words.
Yeah, that is a good word.
What is the definition of demagogue? Because I've seen it used, and I've always heard it described in different ways.
Yeah. I guess the best definition is a demagogue is somebody who tells, I think, insightful lies. Inciting lies. Like for example, Al Sharpton. I would call Al Sharpton. Sorry for any Al Sharpton fans out there, but I would say he demagogues a lot of issues by taking an issue that's really, and interpreting it in an unreasonable way.
Do you want the dictionary definition?
Yeah. Let me have that.
Yeah, it's a noun. It's for a political leader who seeks support by appealing to popular desires and prejudices rather than using rational arguments.
Okay.
That's probably a better definition than mine. He Long achieved his goals generally through intimidation and bribery rather than just persuasion. He was basically a machine politician, and he controlled and appointed people to lots and lots of jobs, and so he was able to dole out favors to his buddies and his cronies and political allies. And
That was pretty common, though, in that day and age.
Oh yeah,
in politics.
yeah, oh yeah, very much so.
He
yeah.
was the picture of a corrupt politician, essentially.
And he also tried to make life hell for his opponents. He would go out of his way to get people fired, and even people who weren't actually speaking out against him. They just happened to be members of the family of somebody who had crossed him. And
I was going to say the family member thing is what I always just shook my head at.
Yeah.
That's vindictive.
Yeah, he was very vindictive. Well, anyway, he long actually campaigned for Roosevelt in 1932, I believe it was. But after he was elected to the Senate, he decided to break with the Roosevelt administration, and he started thinking about running for the presidency himself. He was a big critic of the Federal Reserve Bank, and he said that his policies were the real cause of the Great Depression. And in that particular instance, he might have actually had a point, even though I wouldn't agree with Huey Long on a lot of things. But anyway, to move on, he was in the Senate now in 1934, and he introduced his bright idea, which he called Share Our Wealth. So his plan was a very radical one, to cap personal fortunes at $50 million, limit annual incomes to $1 million, and cap inheritances at $5 million. And then spread all the wealth around after it had all been taken by the government.
Okay.
Yeah.
I read this a number of times, and I never quite understood. So if I am making over 50 mil, then anything above that number, the government takes
No,
and then
no,
uses
no.
to distribute.
No.
That's not your income. The $50 million is your personal fortune, what you have in assets, bank accounts.
So you can't be personally worth more than $50 million. You can't make more than $1 million a year, and you can't inherit more than $5 million.
Yeah.
$5 million in assets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, totally, yeah.
So then what happens? What would happen if I made 1.1 million? What happens to that 0.1 million? Does the government then take that and use it however it deems fit? Is that how this was going to work?
Apparently that's how it was going to work, yeah. And I don't know what, I suppose if you have a fortune at 50 million, and say you make $1 million that year, I suppose you don't get to keep any of it, because otherwise you'd be tacking it onto your personal fortune, and then you'd have 51 million.
From an economic standpoint, this is a terrible idea.
No, well, I mean, it encourages people to spend what they make instead of saving it, right? It encourages the spreading of wealth, and it's kind of like the ideal trickle-down economics, right? It's the pinnacle of encouraging people who have to spend back into the economy that maybe fuels other people. I think it's one of those things that in theory it could or could not be a good idea. In practice, there's no way.
I was going to say, in practice, it discourages people from doing things, taking a risk to do something that can make gads of money, because then they're going to be over the limit. And why the hell would I want to take that risk and make all that money just to not get it?
Yeah, exactly.
Just to invest all that time and effort and my capital to then get my capital back, but then get no return on it because now I've got too much money.
Yeah.
And that's an economic theory. There's a whole bunch of stuff there.
No, we're not here to talk about it.
We're not here, yeah, absolutely.
But obviously his proposal didn't get very far in the Senate, so he started a political organization called the Share Our Wealth Society, which was essentially like a political party, and it had 27,000 clubs, quote unquote, across the country. And by the time Huey Long died, the society had 7.5 million members.
Wow.
So yeah, it was, obviously a lot of people liked that idea. After he went to the Senate, Huey Long continued to dominate Louisiana politics. He went back to Baton Rouge quite often and wrote and lobbied for bills.
He never really left his position as governor.
Not entirely, and he would zip over to Washington for a little bit and then come back. And apparently, the governor who succeeded him would, whenever Huey Long was in town, Huey Long would just take over his office. Yeah, I'm sure that went over really well with him.
Well, he was a supporter, so I'm sure it was one of those things you had to do for the man who got you the job.
Yeah.
But he also he'd walk all over everybody and just yell and point and holler and dictate to people what needed to be done. When that was not his position anymore.
I know. But he still, a lot of people did what he told them to do. He still had lots of influence.
He had lots of power.
Yeah. His consolidation of power continued to grow, even though he was no longer the governor. And opposition got more intense and sometimes even violent. There was actually talk about armed rebellion.
Oh.
And he in that summer of 1935, he called 2 more special sessions of the legislature and passed a bunch of bills, and got all his cronies in the legislature to pass him a bunch of bills. They consolidated his control over the state by creating several new state agencies.
Wasn't it? Weren't the bills passed kind of like rapid fire, one after another, and
Yeah.
they didn't even read the bills
Yeah,
before voting on
didn't
it.
really
They just said,
debate
okay,
that.
next one,
Yeah,
guys.
he wants it, let's
Yep.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see what new state agencies he created here. A state bond and tax board holding sole authority to approve all loans to parish and municipal governments. A new state printing board, which could withhold quote-unquote official printer status from uncooperative newspapers.
That was aimed to stop people who were bashing law.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
essentially, and it's kind of
Stifle First
censorship.
Amendment
Yeah,
stuff,
pretty
yeah.
much. A new board of election supervisors, which would appoint all poll watchers. Now that's handy to have on election day.
Super
You have
handy.
control over all the poll watchers across the state, and also a state board of censors. Huey Long controlled all appointments to all these boards.
Yeah, of course he did.
Yeah.
Was it? And it? Do you know? You may or may not know. Was the wording of the new laws specifically? And Huey Long, blah 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 blah. Well,
Well, these were in Louisiana only. They
Yeah.
worked through the Senate.
right.
Yeah.
But I'm saying the bill that they passed.
You know, I don't.
Did it say?
I don't think they did, but I think everyone just assumed that Huey
That it
Long
was
was going
Huey.
to
Okay.
make the appointments, or else
Okay.
he was actually the appointments would have been made by the governor, who I'm sure would do exactly
Who would
whatever.
rubber
Huey
stamp
told him.
what Long
Yeah.
told him to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nice guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Super.
Yeah. I'm not going to go. There were lots of other stuff that he did. I mean, if you read up on this guy at all, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
He's kind of a jerk.
He was a flaming jerk.
It's
and-
there's a trail of bodies, so to speak, behind this guy.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to find out there's a trail of real bodies. Actually, one of his political opponents actually did die in a convenient train wreck, the car train wreck. But that could have been an accident. Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah, it could have been. Probably not. Yeah.
You know, those happen.
Yeah. In August of 1935, Long finally announced that he was going to run for president the following year. But a month later, September 8th, 1935, he was at the state capitol ramming through a new law, which is called House Bill Number 1, which was a redistricting plan. One of his opponents was a judge named Henry Pavey, who served in the 16th District Judgeship, and he'd been there since 1910. Is an elected judgeship.
Long standing.
Yeah, he had been there. Yeah. So House Bill Number 1 was specifically meant to change the boundaries of his district to include more Long supporters, so that he would be out of a job come next election. That passed about 9:15 the night of September 8th. It was a long session. Oh yeah, I forgot one other thing. Oh yeah, apparently Long also told Pavey that he was going to tell everybody in the world that Pavey's family was tainted with quote coffee blood unquote. Coffee blood meaning there was a black person somewhere in the family.
Okay, I was going to say this is a racial slur, I'm assuming, for the time.
Yeah, and it's like
And this is Louisiana in the
1930s.
Yeah, 1930s.
So obviously it would be a bigger deal to make
Yeah.
that kind of accusation.
Yeah,
at that
no,
time.
I can see in context how offensive that would be for an
yeah.
upstanding, for the time, the upstanding white citizen to be accused of that. Just knowing how people were at that time.
Yeah, it was a serious thing then. Yeah, obviously. But,
well, yeah. In
Yeah.
some certain communities it still is. But
yeah, probably.
Which is
yeah.
still dumb.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Okay, now back to the session. Or actually, let's talk about the assassin, whose name was Dr. Carl Weiss. He was 29 years old. He was Judge Pavey's son-in-law. And he was at the Capitol that day trying to get to speak to Long, but every time he would approach him, he'd get a rude brush off from Long and his bodyguards.
how many were there, by the way, the bodyguards?
I was never able to find out exactly how many. I got a feeling there were at least 4, if not like 6 or 8. I mean, there were a bunch. They were all state troopers.
And I remember reading, I can't remember what it was, about something a year or two prior that had caused him to then only travel with bodyguards, but I'd never seen how many there were.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay.
I'm sure there were. I know there were at least 4.
Okay.
but I don't know.
Well, that's
There might have been
better
more.
than I don't know. So perfect.
I suspect there could have been a whole bunch of them because you'll find out this in a second. Yeah. He kept trying to approach Long and he'd get rudely brushed off.
and this is Wise.
And Carl Weiss.
Weiss, yeah.
Carl Weiss. At 9:20 p.m., just after House Bill Number 1 had passed, Long exited the legislative chamber, was in the corridor outside, and he was approached by Weiss a third time. Although some some accounts of this say that Weiss was actually hiding behind a column in the corridor, and as Long walked by, he popped out. He owned a .32 caliber automatic that he usually kept in his car, but apparently he had it on him. When he tried to talk to Long, he got another insulting brush off, at which point he pulled up the .32 and shot Long from about 4 feet away. Although there's evidence that if he did indeed shoot Long, that he actually shot him from like right up close and personal, actually put the gun to his body. And because apparently there were powder burns on his jacket. You know?
Yeah, no, we've talked about
Yeah.
some of that before. You do have to be exceedingly close for the powder burns to transfer.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly closer than 4 feet.
Yeah. Again, there's there's a lot of different witnesses and a lot of different accounts of this. The bodyguards returned fire and they shot Weiss 62 times.
Which is reasonable.
Yeah, I know.
He was clearly dangerous.
Yeah.
What was it? It was like 30-some bullets in the torso, 5 or 10 in the head, and the rest in the legs. I mean, it's just like literally riddled with bullets.
Yeah, and the
guy was a human colander at that point.
Oh yeah. The thing about it is that whenever the cops, at least this is the way it seems to happen these days in this town, whenever they shoot somebody a bunch of times, usually about half the bullets miss, if not more. So, there was a lot of lead flying around that corner.
These guys were crack shots.
Yeah.
That or they just shot like 120 times.
Well, they were automatics.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they had a couple of Tommy guns. I don't know. Could have been that.
I can't say.
But
I remember seeing something about Tommy guns, but that seems really excessive for a bodyguard for a U.S. senator to be packing around. I mean, that's a lot of firepower.
Yeah, it certainly is. I have no idea. Yeah, I think really probably, they probably shot him about a dozen times and then just stood over his body and shot him a bunch more times.
Yeah.
So basically, he died.
Oh,
But
yeah,
so
he
were
died.
they not taking care? They were busy shooting. What was Long doing? Did Long die immediately? He fell to the ground, or
No. He did. He wasn't dead at that point. He staggered down the corridor and went down 4 flights of stairs, where he met somebody. And the name of this person is unknown, but this person drove him to the Our Lady of the Lake Sanitarium, which is about a quarter mile away.
That person is always referred to as an associate.
Yeah.
When I read your stuff and I'd read it and I realized I hadn't found it, I kept trying to find that. It's always an associate.
Yeah. So don't ask me.
And did she have a sword for King Arthur?
Our
I mean,
Lady
that's
of the
all I
Lake.
can think of. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I can't hear that without thinking about Monty Python and the Holy
Yeah,
Grail.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, where are we at here? Oh, yeah. He
Our
was
Lady
on.
of the Lake.
Yeah, Our Lady. So he was operated on and patched up, but he died anyway about 30 hours later. So Huey Long is dead, assassinated. But was he actually assassinated?
Was he?
Yeah, that's the mystery. Oh, yeah, and the other mystery is what kind of medical treatment did he get?
Was it adequate?
Yeah, was it adequate? Seems like maybe not.
I don't know that question is right to ask based on what I've read, but I know we're going to get into it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a
Yeah,
little
it's
bit.
hard to. I mean, a bullet to the gut.
It just depends on what it
Hard.
hits,
Yeah.
know, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
All right, back to Huey. He was, even though he was popular with some people, they said he alienated a lot of other people, and even in the medical community, he had alienated people. And so he didn't trust any old doctor to operate on him or treat him. But there was a doctor who happened to be in the hospital at the time who was a Long appointee and then therefore considered trustworthy.
Just happened to be there.
Yeah. His name was Arthur Vadrine, and he was acceptable, even though there were probably far better surgeons out there. The other surgeons maybe wanted to kill Long. So
When I've been shot, I usually don't squabble about who my doctor is.
Yeah. Arthur Vadrine, Dr. Vadrine, examined Huey Long and decided that the wound was a through and through wound, one in the front
to back
and out to back. Yeah. And he told Long the surgery was needed, and Long agreed to that, but he requested a couple of well-known surgeons from New Orleans who were summoned. But as his condition was deteriorating so much, it was decided the surgery couldn't wait.
I also remember one of those doctors got weirdly delayed by
A car accident?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
One of them couldn't make it because he was an offender bender.
Weird.
Yeah.
which is a conspiracy. I mean, no, it's not. Sorry.
Yeah, the politics is, I think everything in Louisiana at this time, and maybe it's still this way today, I don't know, everything seemed to be politicized. So anyway, Dr. Verdreen became the chief surgeon, and he was assisted by 2 other surgeons. An anesthesiologist was recruited. His name was Henry McCowan, but he was anti-Long, and he had reportedly said just a couple of days before that if he ever did anesthesia on Huey Long, Huey would never wake up. So he said he would do it, but he stipulated that another doctor had to be right at his side watching his every move.
Smart man.
Yeah, smart move. Oh, and so time for surgery, but what didn't they do before surgery? They didn't take any x-rays.
Do you know why?
No, why?
No, I'm asking. I've never found out why.
I don't know why. I mean, I really can't understand it. It seemed to me you'd want to take an x-ray or two and find out where the bullet is. And maybe that's why they didn't do it, is maybe they felt like the doctor concluded it was a through-and-through wound, so if he had already decided that the bullet was not in the body, maybe they didn't need to take the time to do x-rays and time to rush into surgery.
6 hours between the time that he arrived and the time he went into surgery, correct?
No, it wasn't that long.
Was it not that? I thought it was it 3, or how long was it then? I thought it was like 6 hours between when he arrived and when the scalpel touched, because he was waiting for those other doctors.
No, actually, it was almost 2 hours.
Okay, well,
started the surgery.
Regardless, 2 hours seems like more than enough time to wheel him into the x-ray bay and at least take a shot.
I don't know if he thought it was a through and through. If there's a hole in the front and a hole in the back, where else is the bullet going to be? Why even bother taking an x-ray? Those things are expensive.
But the thing is that x-rays show things, not just metal, but you do see, I mean, granted the technology wasn't that great at the time, but it would give you an idea of if there's pooling of blood in areas of the body, because he's going to have to be in a prone position to take this, not as if he can stand up.
That's fair,
probably show you, like, some ribs got chipped or broken.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like that.
He's going to have been laying down for a while, so I feel like there would have been some information to be gained from doing the x-ray.
There were some strange decisions made regarding this whole surgery. It was a really peculiar thing.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll get into that. A guy named Ed Reed wrote a book about this whole thing, about the death of Huey Long. It was called Requiem for a Kingfish, and he said that the surgery was, quote, one of the most bizarre and unreal operating room settings that one could possibly imagine. Spectators, bodyguards, and medical professionals elbowed each other for space in the operating room, unquote.
Well, there goes all the sterilization practices.
I know. Some of them were surgical gowns, but most were in street clothes. And yeah, just standing right there in the